Okay.
Yay.
Are we live?
Yeah, yes, we're live.
Good. So glad nobody saw any of that fumbling around. All right. So yesterday I went over some of the Rexx libraries that I've developed over the years. So today I thought I'd talk about some of the Rexx programs. I say tools or Rexx-based tools that I've written, most of which use some of those libraries that I presented on yesterday. So I say Rexx-based tools. Some of these are flat-up Rexx scripts, and some of them are more sophisticated programs, mostly written in environments like VxRex, which you might not consider pure Rexx, but they are Rexx. So I'm covering basically a whole just miscellaneous assortment of tools that I've written. There isn't really a theme unifying them, other than that they're kind of useful Rexx programs that I've written. As I said, they're all written in Rexx, in some cases in VxRex. This, by no means, is a comprehensive list of all the Rexx tools and programs that I've written. For the purposes of this presentation, I'm mainly focusing on programs that people may not necessarily know about. More high-profile ones that a lot of you have probably seen or use on a daily basis, or that aren't aren't open source. I'm not really covering, so I'm not going to. Well, some of my programs that you have used are open source, like ANPM, the ArcaOS package manager. I can't really take full credit for that one because it's an ArcaOS product, and it's also, you probably all know about it already, so there's not much point in me devoting a session to it when I can talk about stuff that you might not know so well. So that's why you might notice that I'm not talking about things like NAPS or ANPM or the ArcaOS network selective installer or some things like that. But I hope you find some programs in here that you might not have known about or might not have known much about that you might be interested in. And I have a website. It's not a terribly well organized website that has most of these that I'm going to talk about. Not all of them. Some of them are on GitHub. Some of them are on NetLabs. This website usually has pointers to those ones, though. Also, my website does have a bunch of other Rexx tools and things that I wrote years ago, many of which are no longer maintained, some of which are no longer even useful. And even besides that, a couple of them are pretty arcane. But again, if you want to check that site out, and I may show it briefly at the end if I have time. I would say that if there is a unifying theme to this presentation, it's you can do a lot with Rexx. You can do an astonishing amount with Rexx. Sometimes I surprise myself at what I'm able to manage to do in the language with the help of some extensions, many of which have been written by other people, some of which have been written by me. But yeah, it's a pretty capable environment. So I'll start with one that most of you probably have seen, and that's Archive Viewer. And this is a bit of a sentimental entry because I think this was the first OS2 program, or at least the first graphical OS2 program that I actually wrote. I wrote the original version of it, I think back around 2000. It was designed to be included in eComStation 1.0 or 1.1. And that was identified as a need basically because we didn't have, like OS2 at the time did not include any facility for opening and viewing zip files, except the command line unzip. And in fact, I don't think it even included a capable version of that. So we wanted to include something in eComStation that people could at least like associate with zip files so they could double click on them and it would do something with them other than try to open them in a text editor. So what I decided to do with this is, like there were at the time a number of commercial zip front ends. Zip Control I think was one, and there was another one or two. These were commercial products. I did not want to take away from their market share. So I wrote this program to be deliberately crude kind of, you can use this to view and sort of rather unintelligently extract archives. It can't create archives. It doesn't have a really polished GUI. So if you want something better, you can go and look at these shareware or commercial programs that are out there. That was kind of my play nice with the rest of the community sort of philosophy at the time, which I still have, obviously. Anyway, I rewrote the program from scratch around 2004, mainly to apply a lot of the lessons I'd learned. As I said, this had been pretty much my first OS2 program, one of my first Rexx programs. So I learned a lot in the process, applied those lessons in rewriting it. So the current version is version 2, which is descended directly from what I wrote back in 2004. And yeah, it's looks and behaves much the same way as the original version did. It's just better under the hood. It's multi-threaded, for example. But anyway, what does it do? It lets you open and extract archive files of various types. So what are archive files, or what formats does it support? Well, obviously the usual suspects, as I called them here: zip files, RAR files, in later days 7Z files. And yes, I will be saying Z.
We're sorry.
I'm not. Then there's the Unix style, what are called tarballs. So tar files, tar.z files, tar.gz, tar.bz2, lz, xz. These are all single file compressors that work on top of the tar file format. So it supports all of them if you have the right helpers installed. They're what I called kind of vintage archive types, which became popular back in the BBS days and are still popular among some people today. I still run into ARG files occasionally, or LHARC files, but it supports those. And it supports a couple of software package formats, including Warpin and RPM files. This, I will get back to that last one actually, because it's probably the most obviously useful application of this program that it still has. Now, as I said, it was designed to be crude, but it was also designed to be as simple and quick as to use as possible. One of the things about it is when you open an archive file, it just shows you a straight up list of everything in the file, all of the directory structure, everything. You don't have to drill down into subdirectories to see files in them. You just see everything there. I mean, you might have to scroll down if it's a large archive. Extracting is very simple. You just hit extract from the menu or hit Control-E, and it will pop up a dialog to confirm you want to extract all of the files to the current directory. Or you have the option of appending the name of the archive to the current directory so that it will extract into a subdirectory with the same name as the archive, or not. It's your choice. And that's basically it. So view archive, see all the files, Control-E, enter, and it's done. That's pretty much how you use it. Quick, simple, easy to use, once you understand how it works. It has, in the last few versions, 2.1 specifically, I think, I have added support, which is, again, crude, for viewing or extracting individual files within an archive. It's not terribly elegant under the hood. It basically does it by extracting a single file to your temporary directory, and then if you chose view, it'll open it in a text editor or an associate. Actually, no, it'll open it in the workplace shell associated viewer, I think. But it doesn't always clean up the temporary files properly, depending on reasons which even I don't fully understand, but I don't consider that super high priority to fix because, I mean, it's your temporary directory. You expect it to get clutter in it. The one thing that it does not and will never support is creating archives. Again, that's the purview of other programs, many of which are or were commercial software, so I don't want to tread on toes there. Plus, I can't be bothered to implement it, honestly.
This is why they say Canadians are too polite. That you don't want to create, I don't want to compete.
Well, I won't necessarily argue that.
Okay.
Alex, I have two questions and a comment.
Yeah.
First, some historical context. Many, many years ago, when you came out with version 1.0, I asked you about doing things like creating archives. And you said something to me then that's really stuck with me for a long time. And you said that you never wanted to create a program that you were giving away for free that would compete with a commercial application in the OS2 space.
Yeah.
And I think that's very commendable of you. I think it's very noble, and that should be recognized. That's the first comment that I want to make. The other thing is, assuming that ArcaOS finally gets to the point where we do that retro gaming release that we would like to do, there is most likely a lot of old DOS software that is archived in ARC and Zoo format.
Oh, I remember those.
Zoo.
Zoo.
Don't think I know that one.
I think that we have a Zoo
ARJ.
flavor for OS2.
Huh. Maybe I should think about it.
So how pluggable are new archive formats into the code?
Not super. I've looked at the idea of implementing like a. There is a file that's like a template configuration file for defining archive viewer types. I forget what it's called. That's semi-standard from like the BBS days. I looked at implementing that, and it would have required quite a bit of re-engineering and a lot of work. Like all of the formats are hard coded in Archive Viewer, but it's not that hard to add a new one. I mean,
And
basically the
CSU
magic is in the two source files, open file and extract file. But I mean, I can just show you the logic. It's not that not that sophisticated. So
I never really looked.
this is basically the same. So determine archive type is a function that essentially where are we? Determine archive type. And why did this not open in med? Oh, I don't have med associated with the. Oh, you know what? I'm just gonna. Okay. Oh, geez, it lost my configuration file again. I don't know why it does that every time I change the resolution, but okay, determine archive type. So this is basically how it determines the archive type. Bases it on the file name. But you notice the comment at the top there. I actually ended up adding support for almost all of them over time. The only one that still isn't supported is that PF format. And kudos to you if you know what PF is. You probably do, Lewis.
I do.
Yeah. And then if it doesn't have one of those recognized extensions, it then falls back to a function called read type, which I think actually does have somewhat more intelligent logic for recognizing the contents of a.
So when your Mac friends transfer a file over to you that's got spaces and pound signs in it and commas and slashes.
Yeah.
Scan the
Yeah.
file header or something.
Oops. What is that read type function? Is
And
that
no
something-
extension at
Yeah.
all.
Because these resource forks.
Oh yeah.
Exactly. Oh, you mean you can't tell what that is? No, resource forks don't come over by themselves.
Okay.
Which editor is this?
This is med. It is my go-to programmer's editor. Am I in the right directory here? Probably not. Yeah, that's the problem with med. The open thing doesn't default to the current directory. It defaults to whatever you manually opened last, which is probably somewhere totally different on the disk. So you just cut that out. Okay. Thought I saw it. Yeah, it would help if I didn't press numlock by mistake. Read type. Yeah, well, I'm just gonna.
You put Mets with an S.
I did, and that was intentional.
Okay.
Oh shoot! I'm not running under. Yeah, another OS2 shell. I thought. Must not have set that up on this VM. Okay, never mind. Okay, so what do we got here? Read type. Yeah, so it basically. I think this. Yeah, I borrowed this code from Vite. Says he donated it to me. That was quite some time ago. But yeah, it essentially has some logic for recognizing certain file types based on the file header. Yeah, so thanks to Vite for that. So it is a bit more intelligent than just recognizing from the file name, but it will default to using the file name. So,
So
don't give it the wrong file name extension.
So adding another archive type would involve not only potentially adding to your list of recognized extensions, but adding something there as a fallback for identifying the file type from the header.
Yes, and that reminds me that I was going to show you how I would add a new type. So basically, I would add that logic to identify the new type. Then I would have to add a list archive handler, which again takes the type and then it calls a function that's specific to that archive type. So I would have to write a function for whatever type. So zoo get contents, and then in the other extract file, I'd have to write an zoo extract contents. So I can show you kind of what, say, var get contents looks like. So first, again, the command line programs that it uses to handle these tools, those are also hard coded, but it can support a couple of different ones for most of them. So, and some of them may have slightly different syntax. So, for example, unrar uses slightly different syntax than var32.
Right.
But yeah.
Gotcha.
So it's usually not that hard to do,
Okay.
but it does need to support certain conventions. Like it either has to be able to take the password on the command line if it's encrypted. It also, if you want to support extracting single files, you have to be able to specify a single file on the command line. If it doesn't support a password on the command line, but it does support encryption, then I would have to jump through some more hoops to like implement a pipe redirect thing, which I think I had to do with one of these, like tar or something, but I don't remember. But if it's a simple format with a straightforward syntax, it is quite easy to add. It's really just a few lines of
You
code.
might have to do that with tar, especially if it's a gzip tar,
Yeah.
because you need to extract the gzip first and then pipe that output back to tar to
Yeah.
untar it.
So, oops, that's the built-in tool. So I will open it with Archive Viewer. This is basically what it looks like for a zip file. That's showing up okay, right? Is that legible on the stream, Martin?
Yes, yes.
Okay, good. So this is very simple output. There's no like container view. It's just it's really just a text control which dumps the listing. That does mean that the format of the listing is going to be slightly different for every program. I may show you an example. So if I want to extract, I can just extract. I can also hit Control E, and then it'll default to the current directory, and you can add the current archive name to the path. You can see if I turn that on, it appends that to the directory. So if I then extract the file, I can also tell it to open the folder in the workplace shell after extracting. I will do that. So this is an encrypted archive. I was using it for testing, so it knows that. I will enter the password. There we go. So it created that directory in the current directory, and yeah, there's my archive. Now if I want to just extract a single file, or even better, if I just want to view a single file, say I just want to view the README file. There is view notes. Put that in the temp directory. If you look at the title bar, you should be able to see that. But yeah. So that's handy if you just want to look at the README in a zip file or in a warp-in or in an RPM even. You can do that. I'll show you what this looks like when you open an RPM file or a warp-in. Maybe a warp-in. That's going to open in WPI if I don't do it here. So that's what a warp-in would look like. It gives you the overview of the packages, then it gives you the contents of each package. This is, looks like Greg's latest CWMM, so beta. So let's see what he says in his changelog here. Okay, yeah, good stuff, very interesting. That's how it works. And again, I could, instead of viewing that file, I could just extract that single file if all I wanted was the one file. Now, you will notice that it does continue to dump all its output to the window, so if you want to keep looking at the archive contents, you may find yourself having to scroll back up. I really should implement a function that just says refresh view or refresh listing to clear that stuff out. That occurred to me last night when I was actually prepping this demo, but something to put on the enhancement list. Now, let's try with an RPM file. So this is my RPM sort of factory. Let's try @calc. So now this is quite useful because there are not many programs that will do this. Not many archive tools that will do this. So this is an RPM that I built, and it has what you would expect to be in an RPM file. There's not a lot in here. I'm not sure if the view works with these with the file name only on an RPM. I might have to put in the full. Yeah. I might not actually have implemented file viewing for this for RPMs, but let's see. Yeah, I think it's not really going to handle that Unix remapping in the path, probably. So yeah, the view and extract single file stuff isn't perfect, but it works reasonably well for most of the common formats. I wonder if I can, because I think how it's stored internally in the archive is, no, all right. I should take a look at that. I never really tried that for RPMs, but it's one of those things that's a bit idiosyncratic for each archive type.
Mhm.
But yeah. Just being able to view the contents of an RPM I find very valuable. So this program is on NetLabs. It is actually shipped on the ArcaOS media. It's not installed to the disk. It's only used in the install environment. It's provided just so that you can do stuff like this if you want to look at a zip file or something.
What's it called?
ArcViewer or ArcViewer or Archive Viewer. It's available from my website. The link's in the slides. It's available, like the source code is all on NetLabs. But yeah, I mostly use Ecosoft's Arc tool for zip files these days, unless I just want to do that very quick. Give me the whole view of the file, extract it, or hunt for a single file. Then, as I say, this was designed to be very quick and efficient once you know how to use it. So it's useful for that. But it is also very useful for viewing formats like warp-ins, RPMs, and so on, which a lot of the other archive tools don't necessarily support. So that is my archive viewer. It's, yeah, I haven't made a great many modifications to it in the last few years, but it's certainly not out of support or out of maintenance. I still occasionally update it if something occurs to me that needs to be done. And like I said, I should probably look at that logic for viewing files inside an RPM, and I may look at that zoo thing if you think it's useful, Liz.
Well, I don't know, Matt. Have you encountered any? Because you've probably seen more legacy DOS games.
Yeah,
You encountered zoo archives?
very, very rarely. I'd say it's very early 90s stuff that I've seen that,
So
wrapped in.
ARC would be more.
Probably more likely.
Yeah.
I would
Because
say-
ARC is it's almost like, actually, if you look into the history of things, like I think PK zipped the zip format had heavy inspiration from Arc's format.
Yeah, well, Phil Katz came up with, did Phil Katz come up with SEA? Or did he come up with Arc originally?
I'm not sure. I think PKArc was a program before PKZip, wasn't it?
PKArc was, yeah, yeah, so I think that, yeah, PKArc came out of Arc, and SEA was one of the intermediate formats after.
It might have been.
Yeah. I more often see files from that era in ARG or LZH format, but yeah.
If they've been repackaged, you'll see in LZH.
Yeah.
We'll have to do some snooping around to see what's commonly available.
Yeah. By the way, I should also say, every archive format that this supports requires a corresponding handler, which is to say the command line program that will
Right.
support it. The help will tell you, yeah, here. So the help has a list of all the programs you need. I believe I provided a warp in at some point which contains all of them. Should be on Hobbs or whatever Hobbs is nowadays. And all of these, I think, are readily available through many different sources if you want more recent versions. Just be aware, for some of these, like especially tar or gzip, or you might be gambling a bit if you change around the versions, because sometimes the syntax conventions have changed a little. Hopefully, Archive Viewer is able to support all of the variations of the individual tool in question. It's possible you might run into one that it doesn't handle well. If so, report it if
Just drop them in the same folder as the archive.
put them in the path. They should be installed on your system in the path. And on ArcaOS, most of them, most of them already are installed. I'm not sure if some of the more obscure ones for tar and things are, but I think I actually did put most of them because the person who packaged up the system utilities common baseline for ArcaOS was me, so I think I snuck most of them in there while I was at it. Making sure all of the licenses were kosher and all, of course. Yeah, so that's Archive Viewer. The next one that I'm going to talk about is also included in ArcaOS, and this one some of you probably have used. In fact, I know some of you have used, and that's, where are we? Icon themes. So this is another program that dates back from the early eComStation days and was included in that. It is also included in ArcaOS, because why not? So it lets you change desktop icons based on icon sets or themes. And it does include a few default themes. I have developed a few others, I think, which I've maybe put on Hobbs or wherever. And other people, notably David Grazer, have done a number of other themes, which some of which are pretty impressive. Some of which are certainly, well, all of which are impressive. Some of which I really like. Some of which I am very impressed by, even if they're not necessarily my type of aesthetic. But that's the great thing about them. You can find the aesthetic that works for you. If you want an archive theme where all your icons are based on manila folders, for example, cool. I mean, yeah. So one thing about icon themes, and one reason that it's not really prominent in ArcaOS, is there's a bit of a, it's not conflict exactly, tension in balancing it with the dynamic icons, which is the ping icon support. So icon themes does not support dynamic icons per se. It is compatible with it in the sense that dynamic icons lets you specify icons using its own configuration all across the desktop. But if you don't specify a particular custom PNG file in dynamic icons for one of your desktop icons, what it will do is it will use the current default workplace shell icon for that object and render it as a larger image. And in that way, if that icon is using one of your icon themes, it will pick up the icon theme as the fallback icon. So I don't think I'll run through changing any themes here because it requires a reboot and that takes a bit of time. But what I will do is, what is this? So under ArcaOS, it lives under the System Setup Appearance folder. And these are the basic themes that it includes. So the default one is ArcaOS Blue. Then there's a couple of vintage looks. Some of you might recognize. I don't know how many of you know this, but Warp Server version 4, which, as you probably do know, was actually Warp 3 based, it used the Warp 3 style icons, except it gave them a touching up. It gave a lot of them white borders and a slightly more sophisticated look, which I happen to really like. So these icons, some of them I designed, like I think this one, no, maybe this one, maybe, I'm not sure. One or two of them I touched up to match the theme, but most of these came straight out of Warp Server 3 business. So you compare it to the Warp 3 icons, you can see that they're mostly the same, but a little different, especially the Internet folder icon. That was not my design, that's from IBM. And you can see where the Warp 4 design came from. It was an evolution of that. So this is it's a nice theme. And I have a few others. I actually have a whole bunch of almost finished but never quite finished ones on my hard disk. Like, I may see if I have time, I may try and dig some of them up. They're probably on here somewhere. Or they might be on my NAS actually, and I don't know if my network connection is currently, VPN connection is up right now. But yeah, there are some options. So you generally don't want to mess with these options unless you really know what you're doing. Desktop layout. This does not change your desktop layout. It just tells our icon themes what your desktop layout is. Because under OS2 MCP or under eComStation, certain desktop icons have different icon IDs, or they may be located in different locations, or they may not exist. There are desktop objects that exist under eComStation that don't exist under OS2 or ArcaOS, and the same goes true for ArcaOS. So it will detect reasonably intelligently what it's running on, but if you have changed your desktop layout to match something that's more that's closer to one of the others, then you can change it here. These are this is really not something most people want to mess with. This is if you've actually moved some of your core system DLLs to somewhere other than the normal location. Or I suppose if for some reason Icon Themes has misdetected where these DLLs are and made a mistake and you have to fix it, which is not a situation that I have encountered so far, but you know, it's always possible that the program is not infallible. So that option is here if you need to mess with it. If you don't need to mess with it, I recommend not touching it. And then once you choose your icon theme, you just hit apply. It will require a reboot. You're replacing resources in some of the core system DLLs. Unfortunately, there's no way to really do that without a reboot because I'm not doing something clever like subclassing the workplace shell classes, which I think is what Dynamic Icons does. But no, this does require a reboot to take effect. So just be warned about that. So,
Alex,
yes.
Is it possible to create a theme that use PNG icons?
No,
No? Okay.
that's Dynamic Icons.
Yeah.
You would need Dynamic Icons for that, and I believe they have their own process for doing it. As you know, there's been a discussion on OS2 World about that. David Grazer has, I think, come up with a reasonably good understanding of what the process is. I don't have much experience with sort of the internals of Dynamic Icons. Lewis probably knows more about it than I do, purely by virtue of the fact that he had to set up a lot of the configuration and the placement of the files on disk for it. But yeah, if you use a theme in Icon Themes and you are using Dynamic Icons, the theme that you have will be used for the dynamic icons if they do not have a specific PNG file assigned to them. So,
No, I'm talking about the process in dynamic icons. I think it's only running the PNG files and putting specific names on it.
something
So
like that,
then
yeah.
you point the the path to that directory again,
Yeah.
and you have all the icons.
I believe it is something like that. All right. Again, the sources are available on NetLabs. It does require a couple of my Rexx DLLs, including RxUtilX and VXRex extensions, both of which I talked about yesterday. So you should know what those are. And if not, well, I can't help you. Well, I can, but I'm not going to in the here and now. Okay, this next program, FlushIP, is a very simple one. Conceptually, it really just runs a couple of commands. I think I mentioned it a while ago on one of the OS2 World forums when somebody had a question about this. So I wrote this to handle situations where, well, I originally wrote it when I was at grad school, and I had my home network, and then I had my laptop, and I wanted to take it onto campus and plug it into the network there, or I might want to take it to like Starbucks or something, plug in there. So when you configure your network settings and you want to change them to something else, you kind of need to clear out the old configuration, because it's not just the IP address that's changed. The subnet may have changed, which may affect the routing tables, which might affect the ARP tables. So for example, on my home network, when I was in Japan, I think my local subnet was 192.168.1, etc. But the one on campus was 192.168.0 or something else. So I would have to refresh my TCP/IP configuration, which I could obviously do by rebooting, but I don't want to reboot. Why would I want to reboot? This is OS2. Please temporarily forget what I just said about icon themes requiring you to reboot. but generally you don't want to reboot if you don't have to. So I wrote this script to just completely kill the current TCP/IP configuration so that it starts with a blank slate as if I've just booted up, and then I can run the TCP/IP initialization again, and it will either, if it's the same DHCP configuration, it will just pick up the new configuration, or I might actually have a custom script or a custom profile, and I'll stick a pin in that, come back to that idea of a profile later. I might have one that has a custom configuration. But the first thing you have to do is just get rid of the old configuration. So that's what FlushIP does. And it is, so these are some of the things that you can use it for. Let's say you're using DHCP on one network, you take your laptop, you move over to another network, but you want to use a static IP address on it, and maybe it's also on a different subnet. Or let's say you're using DHCP on your Ethernet interface at home, but then you move to the office or somewhere, and now you need to use DHCP on your wireless interface, which might be LAN 1 instead of LAN 0. So DHCP can only be used on one interface at a time, at least if you're using the standard IBM DHCP client. So you have to change your IP configuration on both network cards so that a different one is now using DHCP. Again, as a starting point, first thing you have to do is just clear out the configuration. So what does this program actually do? Well, by the way, it uses this excellent Rexx library by Paul Ratcliffe. Very useful. This is not a Rexx library that I wrote. It's one of the ones that I mentioned yesterday, which I don't need to write because a very good library already exists. So, FlushIP, where did I put my mouse? There we go. Just get out here. I'll actually show you what's in it. So, in principle, you can actually specify an individual interface to flush, but that's not actually terribly useful because it will deactivate that interface only, but it will also clear all of your routing tables and all of your ARP tables and the DHCP client wherever it's running. So I don't actually suggest using that particular option. It's easier to just run the program without parameters. It'll clear everything out. Then you're starting fresh. So yeah, it basically just runs these commands, terminates the DHCP client, flushes the routing table, shuts down all IP interfaces. It does that by issuing the down command and then the delete command on them. And then it flushes the ARP table. So once this program has run, you have no IP configuration, no active networking.
How do you do that? Are you running existing utilities?
Yeah, it's right here. So
Yeah, you might really see it.
okay. DHCPmon-T, that kills the DHCP client service. Then
So that's something
ifconfig LAN0 down will deactivate LAN0. Then ifconfig LAN0 delete will delete the interface from the current configuration.
Okay.
And then ARP-F will flush the ARP tables.
Okay.
And I do that for, I do all of those, and the ones that involve ifconfig, I will loop through all detected interfaces and do that for. And that's what PR1 util is used for. That detects all the IP interfaces and lets me do this. So let's take a look at my current configuration. No, it's, so I've got, as you can see, the loopback interface and two other network interfaces. Their LAN0 is a 10.0 address. That is the NAT. This is a virtual machine, obviously. So LAN0 is a NAT interface to the host, or through the host. And then LAN1 is actually a bridged, it's bridged to my Ethernet port. So the reason I have it set up like this is NAT lets me basically use the network generally, but having that local address on LAN1, which is bridged to my Ethernet port, that lets me access things on my local network when I'm plugged into my local network without having to go through NAT. And that lets me do certain things like two-directional FTP from one to another and so on. But I'm not on my home network right now. I am VPN'd into my home network, but it is a peculiarity of a VM setup that when you are running a VPN on your host and you want to access that VPN from your VM, you have to use a NAT to do it. The bridged interface is not going to work. It's not going to work for two reasons. First of all, it's not going to work because it's my Ethernet interface and my Ethernet is not plugged in. Currently, the VPN is sitting on my Wi-Fi connection. And second, even if I change the bridge interface to use my Wi-Fi card, because of the peculiarities of how the virtual network routing works, again, it's not NAT, and it won't work. It won't go over the VPN connection. It has to be NAT for whatever reason. So what I want to do here is
What's NAT? What is NAT?
network address translation. It's a mode of networking that you can set up on your virtual machines interfaces. You have several options. There's NAT, there's bridged, there's a couple of others. So I don't think I can really show you meaningfully because the text is going to be so tiny. But if I went into my VM settings here, you would see I've got two virtual adapters on this box. One is NAT, which is LAN0. The other is bridged, and it's assigned to bridge on my Ethernet card.
Okay.
Anyway, what I want to do is just flush this out because that 192.168 address is defined as on this interface, which means if I try to access anything on my local network, it's going to go through LAN1 because that's where the subnet is, so that's where the routing table is going to send it. But as I said, because I'm going through a VPN, I need to connect through NAT, which means I need to send my quote local network traffic through LAN0. So the easiest thing to do is just kill LAN1. Now, DHCP was already running on LAN0, so I don't actually need to change that one. So I know I said it's not terribly useful to specify an interface, but in this case, because I know nothing is changing on the configuration except I'm getting rid of this one interface, it should work this way. So now if I do another ifconfig, let's say netstat, that always gets me. The command under Unix to show all interfaces is ifconfig-a, but for some reason under OS2 it's a netstat option. So I keep getting the two confused, so that's why I keep trying to type ifconfig there. Okay, so now I only have two addresses. And if I, let's see, if I try to ping, this is my ESXi box at home, I believe. No, I think I might need to, yeah, it probably clearing the routing table did something. So I'm going to clear everything, just to
One
be
of
sure.
those addresses is your local loopback thing?
Which
You
is?
said there's two addresses. Is one of them 127 dot blah blah, you know that one?
No, there's 3 addresses. One of those is, so now that I've flushed everything, okay, so now there's nothing but loopback. It does not flush loopback. It always leaves loopback where it is because there's no reason to get rid of loopback, and it's better to have it, generally speaking, than not. So now what I can do is, actually no, I'm going to wait because there's something else I want to show you later about dealing with this issue. So I'm going to leave it at that for now. So you've seen what flush IP is, and I'm going to move on to another completely unrelated Rexx program called Emerge. I'm not going to spend too long on this because I demonstrated this a couple of times at other Warpstocks. This is basically a budget input method editor for Japanese. It lets me type Japanese when I'm not in an environment where I have a Japanese input method editor. It's not really useful on actual Japanese OS2 because those have proper input method editors already. But if I just need to type something quickly in Japanese, it is kind of handy to have. So basically, it brings up a window, you type your Japanese text into it, and then you can copy and paste it to wherever you need it.
Huh, neat.
It has very limited Canada kanji conversion support if you have the open source edict and kanji dictionaries installed. I'll very quickly. How do you like my backgrounds, by the way? These are all included with ArcaOS. I think they're the pixels, yeah. Actually, I will run it from the workplace shell object because I did something slightly sneaky with it, and that is, because it's Japanese, I need to be able to display Japanese text, so I actually have it set to run under code page 932. You can do this in workplace shell properties, by the way, on the language tab. You can set it to run in either your primary or secondary code page.
Wow.
And it'll display Japanese text.
If I have a Japanese font installed, which I do, yes.
Wow.
The one thing about this is, well, actually most people don't use the Warp Center anymore, so it's probably moot. But if you run a program from the Warp Center menu, like here, for some reason, if you run it that way, it will reset this to its defaults for some reason. It works fine on a tray, but I've discovered, yeah, so I don't know. Anyway, I will run it. So this is what it looks like. So it's got several input modes. ASCII is basically just, this is direct input. Well, if you have a Japanese keyboard and you're running on a Japanese operating system, you can probably just type Japanese directly without needing this, but you know, that is what you would expect. The standard format is, well, ASCII full width. This is a particular type of character set in Asian languages where they have like double width versions of the ASCII character set. There's reasons for it that I won't go into because this isn't really a language orthography class, but you can type in normal phonetic characters or half-width phonetic characters. If you don't understand what half-width means, there's really no need to go into that either. If you are familiar with Japanese text and you need to use this program, you will probably know what that means. So anyway, what happens when I type? So I have to type phonetically in Japanese, and it will render it as Japanese characters.
You mean in Romanized
Yes,
Japanese?
Romanized Japanese. So, Tenki ga ikara-san poshimashou. Anybody's ever written the JLPT will recognize that sentence. And there is very crude support for converting words into ideographic characters, the hieroglyphic Chinese-derived kanji. What you would do is you would highlight the word you want to convert and either choose convert from the menu bar or hit shift space. And if there's multiple options for converting that particular phonetic character group in the dictionary, it'll offer you a pop-up menu of the options. The one I want is this one, for the record, which is tenki, meaning weather, and then the other ideographic word in this sentence is sampo, meaning take a walk, and there's only one match in the dictionary, so it converts it automatically. Nice. So there we go, tenki aikara sampo shimashou, which means the weather is nice, let's go for a walk. And then I can copy this.
Clear as water.
What's that?
Clear as water. Yeah.
Yes. So I can copy this to anywhere I want, but it's generally helpful if it's an application that can actually handle Japanese text. Oops, it's utilities that I want. So if it can't handle Japanese text, it will get pasted in the code page that was entered in, which is code page 932. This is actually perfectly usable. If I save this file and then open it in a program that can read code page 932, you will get the Japanese text back. In fact, let's do that. What directory am I in? Probably somewhere in the OS2 directory, right? Yeah, all right, I'll just go up here.
Did you have a Japanese OS too?
I do, actually. I'll just call it Sampo. Yes, I do. In fact, we have a Japanese version of ArcaOS, sort of, except it's not translated very well, or most of it's not translated yet, but the base operating system is Japanese.
So there is an NLV.
There will be an NLV if we can ever get the translation done.
Okay.
And then my QE text editor can handle the text directly because it's Unicode capable and it knows how to read the Unicode clipboard. So if I paste them there,
Nice.
you know,
That's QEdit?
that's QE. That's my Qt4 based text editor.
Well, that's yours. So.
Yeah, I wrote it and it is very nice. So I encourage you to check it out. Now, I saved that file sample.txt there. If I change to code page 932 and then open it in AE, for example, which is the same editor that I used to save it. Did I spell that right? No, I did not. That's the problem with trying to read this in angle. Hold on. It didn't run in code page 932, did it? Yeah. Oh, right. I'm using yet another OS2 shell, which for some reason keeps resetting the code page whenever I change it. So I have to do this. Under the actual command prompt, CMD. Okay, there we go. Now. All right, and because I don't have a Japanese font set up, it's just substituting them with the font substitution glyph, which answers a question that I had yesterday from Sue, wasn't it? Yeah. But I believe I can select. Do I have any? Oh yeah, some of these are. Let's try that one. There we go.
Brilliant.
Yeah. And I don't particularly want it to stay on that font, so I'll set it back before I forget.
Is there just one romanization standard for Japanese?
No, there are 3 commonly used ones.
Oh my god.
But the one that I'm using is the standard for input method editors. It's called word processor style or Wapro style. So, yeah.
Alex,
yeah.
I just want to say that your program and your tips from another Warpstock have been very useful for me because I was collecting also Japanese OS2 software that I needed to grab the text in Japanese and put it in Google Translate to understand what the program does and who did it, so I can document it and upload it to hubs. So it could be very useful.
Yeah. One thing about Emerge is that it does copy the text when you copy it to the clipboard. It copies it as plain text in the code page 932 format, but it also copies it in Unicode format to the Unicode clipboard, which means if you paste it into a Unicode aware application, like the QE editor I just showed you, or Firefox or Thunderbird, it should be preserved. And with the latest VirtualBox additions, I believe that will also carry over to the host. So you should be able to copy it into, actually, 1 second. not sure. Maybe not. It might. I don't know. I'd have to look deeper into that. Things can get a bit weird when you're copying between a VM and a host, but yeah. If you're copying straight within the same OS, it should work quite well. I am taking more time than I intended. Sorry about that, Lewis, but you know, turnaround is fair game. Right? Okay, Rexx, renamed by expression. This is This is a command line program. It's not graphical. Basically, it just lets me. I wrote it because I needed a way to quickly batch rename a bunch of files according to a pattern. X Workplace has a graphical way to do this, but if I'm in a command line, I don't want to have to switch to the Workplace shell and locate where I'm going and then bring up the dialog and do it. I just want to be able to like type enter, right? So regular expressions, you kind of need to know what they are and how they work to use this program, but you basically use a regular expression, pattern matching and group substitutions, and it requires another third-party Rexx DLL called Rexx Regular Expressions Library. That one is available probably still on hubs, but yeah, it's where did I put my mouse? The syntax here is a bit arcane and it's a little awkward to use. This is kind of a power user's tool. It can sometimes take some trial and error to get the pattern that you want, especially because regular expressions can be tricky. That's why by default, it will actually prompt you for every file that you want to rename, so that if you get the regular expression wrong and it prompts you for the first file, you can say, oops, that's not what I wanted, and say no. What I usually do is I'll do that until I have the regular expression correct and I can see it's working, and then I'll hit yes, yes, yes for the first couple of files, and if they seem to be renaming correctly, I will stop and then run it again with the /y to not confirm anymore, and it'll just go through all of them. So yeah, Rexx RE is used, and if you don't have it, it will hopefully prompt, although well, actually, if you don't have it at all, it'll probably error out, but you know what I mean. So let's see. You can also use it just to list files according to a single pattern, a simple pattern. So let's say well, I mean, I could use simple wildcards for listing them, but so let's see if I can do this from memory. I didn't actually prep this part, so regular expression would look something like create a substitution group, then dot star underscore prefix with a backslash, because I think underscore is a special character in regular expressions, and then dot definitely is cmd, oops, end of line, and it should no, I probably messed that up somehow. Oh, I think you know what, I will actually get rid of that. There we go. Yeah, the underscore, I must be doing something. Yeah, so that's matching. Now let's say I want to change the name from test whatever to
Rest.
I don't. Yeah, rest. Sure, why not? Thanks. So I would use a substitution template. So that would be take the first group. So the first group is whatever's in the brackets. So that would be \1. So everything that's in the brackets. Oh, actually no. It's since I'm replacing the test. What I want to do is group the rest of it, because that's the part I want to keep. So the part you want to keep, you generally want to create a group for. So then I want to say rest underscore \1. So do I want to, did I mess up the group brackets?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I might have to backslash those. I can never remember if I need to backslash. You see why I say this is confusing? I always have to use trial and error to try and figure this stuff out. Anyway, you get the idea. I'm not going to spend any more time on this. It is an arcane tool. It is tricky to use, so I don't recommend diving in and necessarily trying to use it. But if you do have a case where you need to come up with a regular expression to rename a whole bunch of files in a directory, this is a useful way. And I can tell you from experience and from somebody who works as a software developer, anytime anybody ever needs to use the regular expression, they will have to spend time developing the regular expression, testing it, and making sure it's right. So, yeah, I don't really want to spend the time to do that here. I couldn't kind of cogitate one off the cuff,
Is it
but
also a nature's tool, like if you get the wrong expression, you're gonna.
well, yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I recommend. That's why it defaults to prompting for every rename.
That's smart.
Yeah. Anyway.
There was an ex-workplace facility for doing this?
Yeah, I think somewhere in here. I don't remember. It might be in the full version of X Workplace. I'm not sure, but there is a way to batch rename files in X Workplace, which also I think uses regular expressions. I barely ever use it because
I wasn't even
I
aware of
find-
that.
yeah.
An expert place. I have a Perl script that does it.
Yeah. Next.
The classic.
Oh, yeah.
Another
Write-only language.
Yet another.
You can write your code to look like anything you want.
Yeah, I call Perl a write-only language.
Try reading it. You're like, what
Yeah.
the heck is this?
Well, try reading it like 3 months after you wrote it.
How about 3 minutes after you wrote it?
Yeah.
My Perl script is 1, 2, including blank lines, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 lines, including blanks and exit.
So verbose.
And the opening comment.
I mean, my God, it should be on one line.
Yeah, I know, that's my goal. The motto of Perl.
Then you can tattoo it on your arm.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
By the way, is this thing on? How do I tell?
You don't have a display on it?
No.
Hold the button in.
Okay.
You have a display now? It should
Yeah.
show you the battery
Okay.
power.
Yeah. All right.
Is the battery low on that one?
It's 1 bar.
Yeah, the battery's low on one of them. It may have turned itself off.
No, this one doesn't seem to be on either. Let me see.
Bluetooth.
Oh, this has 2 bars. Okay.
There you go.
Those were fresh AA batteries.
All right. Is that going to affect the audio on the stream?
No, I mean the mic's here. So.
Oh, okay. It's got its own mic. All right. That's good. You can hear me anyway, though, right?
Yes.
That's what theater training does. Right? Okay. PM Printer Manager. I touched on this yesterday. I don't see the need to spend a huge amount of time on it. Let me see. I will just briefly show you because it uses most of the functions in that Rexx util, Rexx printer utilities. So this is in ArcaOS. It's under the printers folder, manage printers. It's basically this program that I wrote that Rexx printer library for. So this is written in VxRex. You can manage ports, printer drivers, and printers themselves. You can open the properties of a printer or the object itself. Same with ports. So let's see what cups 1 is. Cups 1 is pointing to the PDF cups printer, which is pretty normal. You can also add new ports. Anything that has the sort of driver already installed you can select from, or if you have another port driver you can specify that and install it from here. Some slightly less obvious features. You can import a PPD file into the PostScript driver, which if you have a PostScript printer can be very useful. Also manage your presentation drivers. Presentation drivers are the printer pack drivers, so your PScript, your LaserJet, your Omni, and a bunch of slightly more single purpose ones. So here's a list of all of the printer pack drivers that are installed on my system. Most of them just come with ArcaOS. If you examine one, you can see what printers it actually supports.
Cool.
And there's an option, if a new version of one of them comes out, you can update it, upgrade right from here, or add a new one if somebody releases a new printer pack driver.
Interesting. So if you bring in a new PostScript or PPD,
No, this is not for individual printer drivers, this is for printer pack drivers. So generally speaking, you're never gonna add more one unless somebody out of the blue writes a new one. The only one that you might ever need to upgrade, because it's actually in theory still maintained, is PS Print, because I and a couple of other people maintain that one. So if we release a new version of this, for example, you would then use that button to use the dialog to select the new release of it, and it should copy all of the files into the right places and do everything else that's needed, including re-importing any PPDs that you imported into the old one.
Russ was gonna say, if you bring in a PPD, would that, for printer or something, would that then list it under the PS Print?
Oh, it would print it, yes, sorry, I misunderstood. It would, I think, list it here. Let
It
me
was
just,
listed there, that's
let
kind
me
of what I'm
see,
asking.
brother HL30, yeah, so I believe I imported this one by
Okay,
PPD,
that
so,
PPD,
yeah,
and it was there, okay.
yeah, sorry about that. Didn't quite catch your meaning.
No, I just don't get my letters very well.
Yeah, so that's PM Printer Manager. This is open source, it's on NetLabs. It does have quite a large number of dependencies, as you can see. These are all the Rexx DLLs it uses. But yeah,
I've used this one under ArcaOS and I find it helpful.
yeah, hopefully so. I'm glad you do. It was intended to be helpful. It was not, rather than the opposite. Where are we? Okay. Yeah, written VXRX, I think I covered all that. That's where it's located. It's located on NetLabs under the CUPS project, because it shares some code with the CUPS printer import wizard, which it will call, by the way, if you tell it to create a CUPS printer.
That was helpful.
All right, TCP/IP profile manager. Remember I said stick a pin in the idea of a profile when I was talking about Flush IP? So Flush IP basically evolved into this. This provides an easy way to actually define different TCP/IP configurations and just switch between them graphically. So, for example, if I have a configuration where I need to use LAN 1 for my DHCP instead of LAN 0, I can create a profile for that. If I have static address that I need to be such and such on one network and then switch to another network where my static IP address is going to be something else, I can create a profile for that. So this one, again, requires a couple of Rexx libraries, including pr1util.dll, because it essentially includes the same logic as Flush IP. Where did I put my mouse again? There we go. All right. This one is available on my website and on Hobbs. I've put it here. It doesn't normally come by default, but this is what it looks like. So it's version 1.1. I wrote it in 2015, which is not a coincidence. Well, this is the period when I was at grad school. So as I say, I was traveling between home and campus and had to keep changing my IP configuration. So I've got, like, it'll always start out with, well, it'll show your currently active configuration. I've got my default profile, which is basically just the standard that I use at home. And I've got another profile here, which is basically the same, except it, instead of using DHCP on LAN 0, which my default profile does, it will instead use DHCP on LAN 1. This is just as an example. So one thing that's somewhat helpful is you can actually view your configuration in a tab here. So this will show you your setup CMD. It'll show you your resolve 2, which is what defines your domain and your DNS server entries, and your DHCP client configuration file, which is mostly comments and just has a few somewhat interesting lines at the bottom. So for example, interface LAN 1 tells the client that it's going to be running on LAN 1, and then these are the actual DHCP options that it's requesting from the DHCP server, or passing to the DHCP server in the case of option 12. You can also edit them. So you can edit them directly here. You can also modify them using the built-in tools. And it will actually redirect the configuration notebook to point to the profile when it calls it up. And yeah, this notebook is actually kind of annoying, so I usually use the edit option under view when I need to change these things. But you can also actually change what program it uses to run the configuration. So you could, for example, I think there's like a third party, was it Aaron Lawrence, I think, who wrote like a TCP/IP configuration notebook replacement at some point in Civil, which,
I don't know.
yeah, it was a long time ago, but in theory you could. And you can also define the text editor that's used for that quick edit option. So I just have it set to E, I think that's the default. If I want to create a new profile, let's do that actually. Let's create a new profile which is the same as my default profile, but which doesn't have my static address on LAN 1, I think. Or can I do that? Let's try it. New. So create a new profile. I'll call it Warpstock. And I'll just call it a new profile for now because I have no imagination. And then I can choose to copy it from an existing profile.
Okay, that's great.
I think by default it will copy from your default, but yeah. So now creating a new profile. So I am going to disable LAN 1. I am going to keep LAN 0 using DHCP. Generally on laptops it's good to not use previous DHCP configuration. On desktops it's sometimes a good idea to set that. No routes because it's going to come from DHCP, and I really wish the TCP/IP configuration notebook could figure that out before warning me about this. It's like, yeah, I know there's no routes defined, it's because I've set it for DHCP, but anyway. That's generally the only things you really need to change. So yeah, I don't want to reboot now because I'm not actually changing my active configuration. So if I take a look at my currently active configuration, it should still be, yeah, it's still the default, which is DHCP on LAN 0, static local address on LAN 1. I want to change that to my new profile, which is, as you can see, there is no configuration on LAN 1 now. There's only the DHCP configuration on LAN 0. And the only other change should have been, it would have changed the, no it wouldn't, because it's still on LAN 0, so yeah. So that is correct, it's still running DHCP on LAN 0, so I can apply this. I am not going to apply it because I don't particularly feel like rebooting, but that is what I would do. Well, actually, no, I don't have to reboot, do I? Because I'm not. Yeah, sorry, I don't have to reboot. It incorporates the flash IP logic, so I'll activate it. So now let's take a look at what my configuration is. I now have just LAN 0 and loopback. So now let's see if my VPN configuration works, because it wasn't working before. I can now ping it.
Nice.
So that's going out over my VPN to my home network. And 2.20 is my ESXi box. Jeffrey.
So I have a question about your issue about the rebooting.
Mm-hmm.
This is the alternative to rebooting the machine.
Yes.
So I don't have the situation where I'm moving from place to place, but often I'm testing equipment.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got to set a fixed IP address, which is not the network I'm working on, because some piece of equipment that was in my basement I bring up, it was set for something. So I just go into the object and I change the address, that interface to be static IP, to a new IP address.
Yeah.
So, but I don't have to reboot the machine.
Ideally, no. Now, I do want to put a caveat on that. Occasionally, something, once in a blue moon, seems to get stuck in a cache somewhere, and it doesn't flush properly. If that happens, it is sometimes necessary to reboot. 90% of the time, though, you don't have to reboot.
So in other words, my workaround works, but yours makes it a lot easier if you're a programming genius to write the program.
It's not a sophisticated program. I mean, I showed you the flush IP script, which does the real magic. It's not that, it's really just running 5 commands. The only sophistication in the script is automatically detecting all the interfaces and looping. But yeah, it's not sophisticated.
So, I mean, I understand it, but I wouldn't
Yeah.
feel confident.
Fair enough. But yeah, it's, yeah. Most of the stuff I wrote because I had a need. I found them useful. I don't do a terribly good job of marketing them. I mean, I'm pretty sure I uploaded this to Hobbs at one point, but that was probably the extent of the marketing that I did on it, honestly. I usually would just upload something to Hobbs and it would show up in incoming, and I'd assume that anybody who monitors Hobbs would see it, assuming it doesn't get drowned in a deluge of 10-year-old modem drivers, but never mind. The next one I want to show you, I think, is the last one. Oh, yes. I don't know if any of you have actually noticed, by the way, that my wallpaper has been changing periodically throughout this presentation. Well, the reason why is this guy. This is something I wrote kind of as a proof of concept, because I have for a long time been wanting to see the background properties page of the workplace shell get revamped and enhanced, or like redone, basically. But I thought, how would that actually work, and how would a slideshow actually work, and is it feasible? So I wrote this script, kind of to test it, and also because I wanted something like a slideshow that I could have on my OS2 system. That it was something that I thought. I don't want to feel inferior when other people are showing off their Mac desktops and stuff and they're shuffling. And it's like, why should I? Our operating system's perfectly capable of doing that too. So what I did was I wrote this script, and this script is basically a fire once. So you pass it either a list file containing a list of image files, or the name of a directory. And you can nest those, so you can have a list file that contains the list of another list file, or or it contains the name of a directory, and those in turn can contain list files and other. Why not, right? So the idea is that you then set up some scheduler, which is not included. You set up the scheduler of your choice, like the DT program object has a schedule thing, which I'll show you. There's also cron of various flavors that you can do to run this. So you can run it at fixed interval or at scheduled times a day, just to change your desktop to a random selection within that list that you've given it. The only thing that it requires is wptools.dll. There is an option, if you have, I think it's GBM or one of those utilities, it will use that to be a bit more intelligent about verifying the image format. Otherwise, it just falls back to like using the file name or something. Just to make sure that it is a supported image format, because you pass it a directory name that has other files in it. You don't want it like trying to set the desktop directory to a text file or something. But the list file format is capable of being quite complex. So I'll show you how I have this set up. So under my, I've placed it under my, I think, multimedia directory, just because that seems like a good place for it. Yeah, here it is. So wallpaper changer, this just calls wallchange.cmd with the name of my configuration file, and then it just pipes the output to a log file, so if something does go weird, I can see what's in there. So the magic here is that I have this set to run on a schedule. If I can click on the window border. Schedule is here. There we go. So if you have DT program, the drag text program enhancements installed, which come with ArcaOS, you will have this tab. So I have this set to run every 10 minutes, and it just chooses a random image every 10 minutes. Or I can run it manually. So yeah, can't type today. My fingers are getting cold. It's fine. So this is basically what the list file looks like. The fields are tab separated. Nothing is actually necessary except the first column, which is the name of the file. Everything else will adopt defaults if it's not there. So you've got the name of the file, followed by a tab, followed by the display mode of the image. In this case, it's S, which means scale to desktop. I could say, I could add a scaling factor by adding a comma number. So that would then scale it to 2 by 2 on the desktop for that image. The other option is N, which is normal, which is native, which is the image's native resolution, so it wouldn't be scaled. The next column is a lot of this stuff I kind of added as later features as I used this and discovered stuff that I thought needed doing. So this column actually lets you change the text color of the desktop to be appropriate for the background. So you can see this one is using black text, but most of them are using white text, except this one is using sort of pink. It seemed like a color that would stand off somewhat against the background. The last column here is the time of day during which I want this image to be usable. So I can tell it that, let's say I want only certain images on the weekend. Or let's say if I'm going to do a client presentation, I might want to change to might want to have a set of images that have my company logo or something on them. That they're images that I want to show during working hours,
Nice.
or vice versa. You can say an hour range, so 9 to 18 would be 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. I can also, after a colon, put days of the week. So 1 to 5 would be weekdays. So if I have that, it would be 9 to 6 on Monday through Friday. This image would be part of the rotation. If this field is not present, it is assumed that the image is always going to be part of the rotation. By the way, you can add ranges here. So I could, for example, say 9 to 6 p.m. and 11 to 12, if I wanted. Or I could say I want it on Monday to Friday, but also on Sunday. The syntax can get quite convoluted. It is explained in the documentation as well as in the comments in the Rexx, like the header on the program itself. So this is kind of describing how the syntax works. If you don't want to deal with the list file, again, you can simply give it the name of a directory as a parameter, and it will just rotate through all the files in that directory. The downside is that you then don't have the option of setting like text colors and custom times. But this is a nice program, I think. I'm quite pleased with it. It does have one pitfall. That is, every now and again, if I have certain programs running or if I have a certain number of programs running, it will hang when it tries to change the wallpaper. As far as I can tell, this is a bug in the workplace shell. It is, the way I change the desktop is this, I use a setup string to modify the desktop. I have tried using a few different methods. I have tried using Rexx to set the setup string. I have tried using a program, I think one of Rich Walsh's utilities, to set the desktop as well. The same thing happens, so I do believe it is a problem in the workplace shell. If you have certain programs running or a certain number of programs running, I'm not sure what the pattern is. I suspect it's not so much the programs themselves as where they're sitting in memory. SeaMonkey is a big offender, unfortunately. I do find that if SeaMonkey is running, it is quite common to have it hang. Now, usually when it hangs, it just hangs the wall change process. It just won't change the wallpaper, and you'll see the script in the window list. It's just stuck. Usually, you can just break out of it. once in a blue moon, I have actually seen it hard hang the workplace shell, but that is very rare. The other thing I've noticed is running, when I started playing an old DOS game recently, which I have on here, it consistently would hang, and hang hard, if it tried to change the wallpaper while that DOS game was running. So I have actually put logic in wall change now to detect if a DOS session is running and to not change the wallpaper, just to be safe. I don't know if it's DOS generally, or just that game, or just DOS full screen sessions, or just the particular way I'm doing it, but I thought it would, I decided to just apply the cudgel and be safe. So, this is available on my website, like most of my utilities, and I think I might have uploaded it to Hobbs at one point. I don't remember, but yeah, that's where it is.
So Alan,
And, yeah.
if you've got it on a timer, you're submitting the same last list each time the timer ticks, and then it's picking randomly something through the list?
Yeah, it uses a random number generation
Okay.
to then go through the list, and it also has logic to detect what the current wallpaper is and make sure that it doesn't select the same wallpaper twice in a row.
Oh, it didn't change.
Yeah. If it didn't change, then you know the program hung, and you can usually just like break out of it, as I say. Martin?
Yeah, there is a question from DG in the chat about Rexx. Can Rexx work recursively to transfer all directories?
No,
No.
it's not that smart. It's basically just a straightforward rename a batch of files.
Okay, there's another question from Jan-Eric Larka. I don't get it, but maybe you. How about Rexx and moving it to moving to it as it is available? These scripts works with Rexx?
Most of them should. I generally do try to test my Rexx programs under Rexx, the OS2 default version of it. It's possible that some of the ones which I mostly just use myself and only kind of released as an afterthought might not have had super rigorous testing. I do generally try to make sure they run under it. I don't use ObjectRexx myself, but yeah, I hopefully these would work. And if they don't work, please let me know, and I'll do my best to fix them. I think we are well past time, but any questions? All right.
Thank you.
Thanks.